Welcome to Ecclesia Principles, a biblical strategy for believers to engage in God's design for government with Ray Eppard.
Hello, glad you could join us again today. This week, we have been looking at the nature of government, the tendencies of government. In other words, which way is the water flowing? That government left unchecked, which way will it go? And we've used as our text 1 Samuel chapter 8, beginning at verse 11, because in this story here, Israel was wanting a king. Now, it wasn't that there was no government. If you would, they were under the rule of law. And in that situation, it was the law. But there were judges, there were things in place for when crimes were committed and so forth, and how to process all of that. All of those things were in place. There was liberty. The law, the literal law of Moses, ruled over everything. Now, in that sense, if a nation is going to have liberty, then it has to function under the rule of law. That would be the illustration that we have from Israel prior to the kings, that liberty survives, liberty thrives under the rule of law. But when you move away from the rule of law, liberty diminishes. Liberty diminishes. And when liberty diminishes, there's another side effect that ends up growing. There's a problem that comes and surfaces when liberty is diminished. And personally, I believe we're seeing this show up at a greater and greater level today, because liberty is being diminished to a greater and greater level. So let's look at this and then we'll talk about it. Let's read 1 Samuel chapter 8, beginning with verse 11. Here's what God told Samuel to tell Israel. Here's how it's going to be if you move away from the rule of law and have a king. And he said, "This will be the behavior of the king who will reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them for his own chariots and to be his own horsemen. And some will run before his chariots. He will appoint captains over his thousands, captains over his 50s. Will set some to plow his ground and reap his harvest, and some to make his weapons of war and equipment for his chariots. And he will take your daughters to be perfumers, cooks, bakers. He will take the best of your fields, your vineyards, and your olive groves, and give them to his servants. He will take a tenth of your grain and your vintage, and give it to his officers and servants. And he will take your male servants and your female servants, your finest young men and your donkeys, and put them to his work. He will take a tenth of your sheep, and you will be his servants." Now, with this, as I've often stated, that last phrase there, "you will be his servants," is what will happen with any form of government if the rule of law doesn't stay in place and the principles of liberty are not protected. It will gravitate toward the people become the servants of government. That ultimately, the way government will always look at things, and when I say government will always look at things, I'm talking about if it goes unchecked, is the way it will solve problems is by taking from people. If you read, again, that whole passage there in 1 Samuel chapter 8, it was talking the king will take this, the king will take this, he'll take this, and he'll take that, and he'll take this other thing, he'll take the best of this. Government will continually take. The way it seeks to solve problems is through taking from the people, taking their liberties, taking their money, taking their resources, even taking their opportunities. This is how government thinks to solve problems. It gravitates to that because governing always involves a lot of problems. It just does. Governing always involves a lot of problems. And the problem with that is it gets to the point that those doing the governing just want their own life to be good. So I'll take this away from you and I'll take that away from you, and that'll finish this problem, rather than developing a real solution, rather than empowering the people and educating the people properly to function and maintain the liberty and do well with the liberty. It's just take away, take away, take away. And because it's easier to do. It's the lazy way to govern, in all honesty. It's the lazy way to govern. But where I want to conclude, because with looking at this text this week and talking about the general nature of government, you see, as government as it seeks to solve problems, not by empowering, but through just simplest solution, take it from the people. Don't let them do this. Don't let them do that. Don't let them have that. Through doing that, liberty reduces. And there's a byproduct that will grow. Now, I'm not saying that it's not inherent at all times. There are good and bad people. There are people that do right, and there's people that don't. And with that, I'm not saying that there's never a time where this problem doesn't exist. But what I'm saying, and I'm holding back on it just a little bit here, because I want you to see this, because my kids, when they were young, they're 20s now, in their 20s, but that both played sports. And one of the lessons that I used to teach them in life, they played baseball for one. And I talked to them about how you hold the handle of the bat, and what that does. Your hands are here on the handle, but your hands are also controlling the other end of the bat. And I didn't break a lamp, but I got there, I said like this, I said, my hands are right here. And I would take it to where the barrel of the bat was just shy of the lamp. And I would go, but it's where my hands are that determines whether or not that lamp gets hit. Even though my hands aren't over there. My hands are on the handle of the bat. But the end of the bat is doing destruction over if I keep going. And you see, there are things, when liberty continues to be removed, it's like that handle of the bat. If you continue to solve the problems that way, your hands are on the handle of the bat, the lamp's going to get broke. The lamp's going to get broke if you keep functioning that way. And one of the things that happens when you continue to take the liberty away from the people, corruption in government increases. Because here's the thing, when the people's liberty is protected, the rule of law is in place. And everyone is under that rule of law. The further you get away from it, like, again, I've referenced this a couple times this week, but, and you actually see more people saying it, but the governor of New Mexico said something along the lines of, unalienable rights are not for all times, or something to that effect. Rule of law, they are. That's why they're called unalienable. You can never be separated from them. I mean, at that point, when I first heard it, I thought, do you not know what the word unalienable means? It means you can never be separated from them. And was basically saying there are times you can be separated from these rights that you cannot be separated from. Just like, well, anyway. But with this, you see, government, when liberties are taken, you move away from the rule of law. And government, then, those in power end up being over the law, which means that there are times that the law does not apply to them. It doesn't apply to them. It applies to the little people. The little people have to be kept in check. We're up here overseeing everything, and there's certain rights and privileges that go with that. No, you've moved away from the rule of law. But the more you move away from the rule of law, the more you move away from liberty, the more corruption will become a reality. There we read in 1 Samuel 8, God kept saying, he will take this for himself. He will take that and give it to his friends. See, he was pointing out that corruption is going to grow in all of this, because as they take away your liberties, they will see the opportunity to empower themselves. See, when you take away the rights of others, you empower yourself. What government should be doing is empowering the people. That's the proper approach. That's the proper path in dealing with any of the issues. Find a way that you can empower the people to use their liberty appropriately, not just look to restrict it. You see, much of the, not all, but much of the history of the United States that's a black eye to us. You know, one of the things that comes to mind right off is the Trail of Tears. Trail of Tears was a horrible part of our history. What was done to Native Americans, just sending them on that march that became known as the Trail of Tears. Many died, but it was brutal to those folks. But here's the thing that you typically do not hear. President Jackson, at that moment in time, what was being done was the Native American lands were being moved to his friends' control. He would let them know what they were going to do next, and then they would do this, and then they would move in and get the property. His friends became very rich through this process. And I'm sure that he benefited from that as well. But you see, the whole Trail of Tears was a story about corruption. Corruption. It wasn't just brutality. See, the Bible tells us that the love of money is the root of all evil. And that is true. The love of money is what brings about all evil. The love of money, wanting to prosper, wanting to make money off of lands of people that we can just kick them off and then we can get it. There's a lot of questions about what's been happening in Hawaii lately. That some of those, that we may be seeing the beginning of another Trail of Tears in a manner of speaking. A possible land grab because of certain things that are not being allowed now. That you need to follow that. But the love of money, because land in Hawaii is extremely valuable. It's very valuable. And with this thing, I mean, when was the last, anyway, just everything that has went on over there, when was the last time you saw anything take that long to get fixed as far as a fire? That's just, especially when it's surrounded by water. Water is easily accessible. But anyhow, but with this, the love of money was behind the Trail of Tears. It was a land grab, is what it was. And there were people that you could take what was theirs and get away with it because they were above the law. You see, we have to understand the rule of law has to be what governs our land. Liberties have to be protected. Whenever you do not protect liberties, you're setting yourself up for corrupt leaders. God bless you. See you next week.